I think picking the right palette is more important than sound design generally. Sound design is important if you've got a synth and you want to know how to tweak it in the necessary ways to make it the sound that you want, right? You just have more options when you understand how a synth works. If it's got a layer of noise that you don't want, you know how to reduce that. You know how to reduce the release or the decay of a sound. But really all those things serve a singular purpose, which is to realize your choices, realize your palette and your taste. So I think sound design, how do you accomplish that? Well, you get better as a producer, and then you start becoming more particular about your taste and the decisions that you make. And you start saying no to more things. You don't just reach for the first snare that sounds decent. You reach for a snare that seems a part of the family of the sound that you are intending to make with this song. Let's say you want to make a song that feels like, it feels like Peru or something. So you look into the sound palette of Peru, and maybe you as an artist feel like your mixture is Peruvian meets psytrance, okay? Just throwing it out there. So you start to think about what that palette includes, and you start to make more choices that say no to things. No, I'm not going to use this snare because it's too clean. I want to use an ethnic percussion that sounds more native to Peru. And I'm going to use some psytrance sounds, but not all the psytrance sounds, maybe only the really hard ones. And in my opinion, that's how you make a palette. It's a lot easier to think about what you want to say no to, and you end up with a style at the end of that. That's very important, saying no, because there's a lot of great samples out there. And once you start constraining yourself, the constraints help a lot to create a certain sound. I think that's very important. If you listen to guys with a very specific sound, you'd see that they're using a lot of constraints. They won't just use every kind of sample. Sometimes it's always not the brightest or the biggest, but it still creates a very cool sound, and that's important. Do whatever you can to get the inspiration to flow, but don't take it so easy on yourself and say, oh, I'm having writer's block, I'm just gonna go take a little me day, a little spa day. No, you should really, anyway, my philosophy, often painful, but I just sit in front of a computer until it happens, and if nothing happens, I just go to bed and I feel like a worthless human being, and then I repeat the process the next day. That's what works for me. Just keep at it. Keep at it. You know what breaks writer's block? Writing something good. Oftentimes when you cross the finish line and you score a touchdown and you remember what that feels like, then you're back in the spirit of it. You're back in the mode, and you're going to score more touchdowns. That's what I find. How do you choose your vocalist? A really important thing is songwriting. Not all good vocalists are great songwriters. There's a lot of great vocalists out there. Almost everybody, in their family has someone who can sing okay, but that's not really what makes great songs. Having good taste in the way that they write, and writing interesting lyrics and melodies is really important. And then also having a great voice helps. I really encourage you guys to find a vocalist, especially if you're getting started, and work with them a lot, because it teaches you a lot as a producer. Because suddenly you're not just in there like this lone wolf, nerd. We're all pretty nerdy guys. Let's accept it. Who's with a computer producing. You're suddenly involved in another human being in the process, and everything that you do is in furtherance of the song that you've made together, and in furtherance of how to better create a song around their vocal. And so using an artist and building around them, it just really gives you a new energy that you can start really whipping out songs quickly, and you can learn how to produce, very quickly, I think, by using a vocalist. When I was getting started, it was my vocalist was this girl Dev, and we did a lot. We did G6 together and Bass Down Low, and by producing all of her music, I really learned quickly how I would produce my own music and the decisions that I would make. Try producing for a singer 5 or 6 songs, and I think you'd learn a lot about producing and how to simplify. It really does help. Yeah. How to write catchy melodies. Oh, no big deal. Catchy melodies. How to write catchy melodies. First, melodies usually have chords under them. So a great way to start is put down some chords that you like, and start writing melodies that go around those chords. Oftentimes you'll find the catchy melodies you hear on the radio and stuff, they work with the scale called the pentatonic scale. That means they're mostly focused on, how do you say this? They skip if you're in C major, right, they skip the 4, which would be an F, and they skip the 6, or 7, sorry, which would be a B. And now you've got a pentatonic scale. And if you listen to Happier by Marshmello, he does that. If you look at, what's that great Porter Robinson song, Shelter, with Matty Young, he does that also. I actually have a tutorial coming out soon where I talk about catchy melodies and what are some of the patterns that are shared between some of our favorite catchy melodies. You see the pentatonic scale come up a lot. You see playing around the chord that you have underneath happen a lot. And, you see repetition happen a lot. So usually you come up with a theme and you give people, various variations of that theme. How do I get the cleanest kick possible in a drop? So there are a couple things that help your kick. And start with a decent sound. Of course, I've made a lot of packs with some really great kicks, the sounds of Kazimir, and there's a lot of great sound packs on the Dharma side that are already just a good starting point. The next thing to make your kick stand out, your sidechain is really good in the drop. Your sidechain on all the instruments. So the purpose of a sidechain is to get out of the way of the kick and to make the kick feel big, really. It gives you this impression that the kick is so big that it's pushing everything out of the way. To my ear, that's what sidechain does. So make sure that your sidechain is really getting out of the way, especially of the first initial milliseconds of the kick. If you have a sidechain that's more relaxed, that's fine, but then add an LFO tool or something and really make sure that the initial click is not being taken up by any of your instruments and that space is being left for your kick. And then use some transient design on your kick so that the click of your kick really shines through. Oftentimes with sounds, the way that you can make them more apparent to your ear is just by adding beginning. When you raise the whole volume of something, it can take up space in your mix that you don't have. So in fact, you don't always want to raise the volume of something to make it more apparent to your ear. You just want to turn up the transient. Turn up the transient alone doesn't take up much space in the mix, and it makes things catch your ear a lot more. So to make your mix, make your kick stand out in your mix, I would suggest transient design and good use of sidechain. How can I full maximize a song without making it clip or overdrive? So how do you really get the most out of that? Well, you can keep pushing it in there. You can use a compressor on the way in. You can level your sounds out so that certain sound, if your kick is really big, for instance, if it's too big, then it's going to be causing distortion before the other sounds get lifted up into the limiter. So take a look at your mix with that and see if you can really get the most out of, making things louder, making your kick not too much louder than other things. Get it beefy and then send it into the limiter. And there's other tricks, of course. You can use multiband compression. Use sausage fattener. You get even more of a sausage. These are ways that you can, really push it on the mastering side, but a lot of it gets done on the mixing side, and you want to create space for things. You don't want too much, low, mid, muddiness building up. These are all things that later will give your compressor or your limiter a hard time. So you want to just get the mix really as simple as you can. You want, a few main ideas, a few main elements, instruments like your kick, your bass, your synths, and you want them to all have their very individual space. And then when it comes to sending to the mastering bus, you'll have a much easier time. Your compressor will know how to deal with these things. If you don't have too many things taking up too many nice individual space, that's often the best way to go. Mixing, it comes at the end and it can polish something, but you can't really polish a turd. And the idea is where it all starts. The idea is the most important thing. So when I look back on a lot of songs that made a difference in my life, they didn't make a difference in furthering my career because they had such a great mix. In a lot of cases, they had kind of crappy mixes. Like, frankly, like a G6, had a lot of things wrong with it. There are other songs that, you know, it was more about the idea than the mix. And so don't get too focused on the mix. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Again, dharmaworldwide.com. It's live now. I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear what you think. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I love you all so much. And I'll catch you soon. I'll catch you on the site with all the tutorials I'm blabbing about. Okay, guys? So have a good day. And stay safe and stay inside. Okay? Love you guys.